back, everyone. So today I wanted to kind of go over some recent updates with the 351 motor that came out of the 68 Falcon. You guys who've been following the RW Falco YouTube channel or RW Falco Performance on Facebook and some of the other small block Ford platforms, I've kind of basically shared the progression of having a separate 430 Windsor that was built, figuring out how I was going to swap it, which way we were going to go with headers and stuff, going from a Trick Flow R Series head from an Edelbrock Victor Jr. Everything else being the same on as far as both a 9.5 deck height block. With everything else being the same, I figured that the motor swap should be pretty much straightforward. Motor mounts, all that stuff won't really be the challenge. The only real difference in terms of marrying up the motor to the chassis was the headers. Now, these are Victor Juniors, and these exhaust ports are raised 1/8 of an inch with 2-inch bolt spacing. And on the other motor, there's the Trick Flow Twisted Wedge R Series, which has 1/2 inch raised exhaust ports with 2 3/4 inch bolt spacing. So that was really the only difference. The headers that were on this car on the current motor were a set of Hedman do-it-yourself headers. These were long tubes. They were 1 7/8 step to 2 inch right after the bend for the better part of 10 years in the combination. I posted the motor on Ford Small Block Performance Facebook page, 351 Windsor 9.5 deck height Mafia. The motor's for sale, and at this time it is not. To be honest with you, I'm so busy I don't even really have time to even really think about what I would do next. But let's take a look down. You can see here's a slightly worked over Victor Jr. Intake and heads. The heads reported, and then the Victor Jr. intake, as you can see, just had a little bit of roughing and port matching. So nothing serious on here. This motor in a 68 Falcon with a 5-speed Tremec made through a 9-inch rear end at the time when it was dynoed, made 472 horsepower, 527 pounds of torque to the tire. A hobby and more of just something I would take street strip. Now in hindsight, looking back, some things that I've learned from having an engine that was a built motor, or that could have handled more power than what we were currently making. This was a pump gas in a hydraulic roller stroker motor. Going back, I probably would have sprayed the motor with nitrous, had turbocharged it or supercharged the application somehow. Why not just boost the motor that's already in the car? At the time, I wasn't really thinking that way, and although that is a good thought and it's a way of saving money, anytime you change up a combination, whether you're adding boost to it, even if the motor, let's say in this case, was already built, you're probably going to have to pull the motor apart, do an inspection, check bearing clearances, check bearing life, check the wear and stuff like that. So it wasn't really something that I was trying to do. These heads in an NA form, I know people have worked over Victor Juniors where they can make 600 plus, 650, all day on a solid roller. And at the time, it just wasn't something that I was looking to do. Building a motor for boost would that have kept my power hunger or my power appetite in check? The new motor makes about approximately 150 to 200 more horse than this motor. So it's not, am I really stepping up? Honestly, a lot of people would say no. One thing I am doing out the gate though is I will be spraying the new motor. So that right there is, I consider it a step up. Consider the extra power, but then also the nitrous on top. And, I could have sprayed this motor as well. So it wasn't like it was something that, is, again, something that could have been done to the current engine. So I would say, in hindsight, if you're gonna build an engine, and you guys have probably heard this before, build the engine and build the power that you want from the get-go. If you have any slight inclination or any slight, I might step up, or down the road, no, do it now. Because in 6 months to a year, if you're, and this is just me speaking from my experience, 6 months to a year, I want more power. And to be honest with you guys, this motor right here, I've already kind of been thinking, okay, well, how can I rebuild this motor? How can I go through it and make more power? So the answer is if I were you guys, build the power you want from the get-go. Whether you're gonna have forced induction, nitrous, whatever the case may be, build it off the top. It's always better to go bigger. It's probably one of the realest statements I've heard in the performance, aftermarket, horsepower, whatever you want to call it, industry. It's always better to go bigger. This motor ran behind a TKO 600 for the whole time of its life. This transmission, I will say I'm impressed with it thoroughly. I'm happy with its capability. It never really gave me any issues. I would say in the early stages when I would take it to the track, I did have a money shift occasion. I can share that video on RW Falco Performance. I had a money shift event going down Sacramento Raceway where I went from, I was wide open third going into fourth, and as soon as I went to press the clutch in and bring the shifter down to fourth gear, that thing popped back up and went back into third, and the motor the RPM just shot up. I don't remember seeing what RPM the motor shot up, but it definitely surged, and I would imagine it had to have been 9,000 plus RPM. And when it did that, the motor made a backfire. I thought the engine blew up, honestly. I was probably passing the 8th mile, and the guys that were at the starting line, they asked me, like, why'd you do that? And I was like, I didn't do nothing. When I went to go shift, the transmission went from from third to fourth. It just literally, the shifter like went back into third, like out of my hand. And from then on, I learned to take a firm grip on it. But yeah, I thought I blew the motor when that happened. It actually made a backfire, and a coworker of mine was standing at the starting line. And he said he saw a flame come out of the exhaust. So I let the car coast to neutral, as I normally would, and slowed the car down, went to the turnaround lane, got my time slip, and I found out it was idling just fine. So I was like, oh, I was lucky, really. So yeah, that is the only thing I've really had with this transmission. The TKO 600 really, it shifts. It holds power for sure. But the shift quality, it just feels like you're always having to like muscle it, or just like you're forcing it, like it doesn't want to. But you hear people rag on it all the time, and there's some upgrades and improvements you can do to it. And I wasn't just gonna send the transmission out and pay for those upgrades where, you pay to have improved shift rails, forks, whatever those parts are internally to improve the shifting quality and the feel. I just wasn't gonna pay. If when you're into, paying for an upgrade like that, you're already halfway into the cost of a new transmission. So that's what I did. I ended up going to the T56 Magnum. So the new motor will have a T56 Magnum. We'll still be running the McLeod RXT, but we're going to switch over to a QuickTime bell housing. So this Lakewood scatter shield was the bell housing that I used for the lifespan of the motor. But yeah, this Lakewood bell housing served me good for a lot of years, and that was pretty much it. We originally started out with a center force dual friction. That clutch lasted about 3 years or so, and every time I would do a burnout and make about 3 or 4 passes, on that 3rd or 4th pass, it would just slip. So obviously, once you got enough heat through the center force, it was just done, and eventually it got to the point where it started slipping in 4th and 5th. So I didn't mess around with that. I just went straight to the McLeod RXT, and that clutch has held everything you could imagine. We actually had 3 years on the McLeod RXT, just pulled it out, and I inspected it the other day, and you couldn't tell. It looked like a brand new clutch. Plenty of material left on it. And so we ended up doing that. We also ran McLeod throw-out bearing, which has been money the whole time as well. So yeah, McLeod products have been pretty good. At first we ran I think it was a Willwood. It was a outside the bell housing type of throw-out bearing. And the only problem with that was trying to get the leverage right to where it could have enough force to disengage the clutch, and those actuators would just leak. The hydraulics on those would leak. So it's always better, if you guys are doing a clutch, is to do a throw-out bearing that rides on the input shaft. The only downside is if it leaks, you know, you got to pull the transmission out. If it's one that rides externally, it's a lot easier to access. So there's a trade-off there, but we found that it was just problematic to try and get an actuator with that kind of leverage on it. It just continued to leak. So we went that direction. But other than that, it's been rock solid. I think with the transmission, when you're running, you know, when you're kind of running somewhat of some power behind the engine, you have to really make sure that all the components line up well, that they interface well together, and that they're rated for the duty that they're going to be seeing. So I always like to play it safe and use that thought process. Always better to go bigger. So think that with your clutch, think that with your transmission, and you should be okay. And then also what we ran on top of the engine, the Holley HP 750. And I would say this carburetor, honestly, I didn't realize it, but as the years rolled on, I'm like, man, this thing is really just turnkey. And it was. I didn't have any issues with it. I was gone for a year. And after returning, there was some, I think there was some buildup. There was some stuff that was getting up the fuel line, and it ended up backing up the carburetor, so I had it rebuilt. But that was almost 10 years we got when they had just launched that series, and yeah, I'm definitely a believer. So on the new motor, we're gonna run Pump E85, and what we did was we did a Holley XP950 E85 carburetor, and we sent that out to Kevin down at CSU. He worked it over, and the thing is money. So we're gonna run Pump E85. Of course, I'll check my ethanol content. I have a tester, and I'll check it to make sure, you know, I'm at least 60%. The motor's 13-to-1, and it's gonna be a nitrous motor. Nitrous will be down the road, of course. I wanna kind of get things sorted out, get the car going, and then we'll dial in the nitrous. HP 750 was what ran on this motor, MSD distributor, and we did March pulleys and brackets, and this motor spun up to about 7,000 RPM. The alternator, the belt, the power steering pump, I mean, none of that stuff missed a beat. It was rock solid, never overheated. In the car, we ran a Griffin aluminum radiator, and with the Flexolite electric fan. The thing would come on at about 180 degrees, and it would just control the temperature, keep the temperature in check. Watch the combination that came out of the car. Again, I have no plans for this motor in the near future. I work methodically, one thing at a time. Patience is key. Patience is a virtue. Working with cars and you know, this has taught me patience. If you guys, for those of you who've been following, please like my channel. Please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. I appreciate the support. Bring on more small block Ford content, but also LS content. I want to give a shout out to Outlaw Performance Garage YouTube channel. I want to give a shout out to Strictly Muscle Car Talk. It's a Facebook group in the Bay Area. So shout out to them. Shout out for allowing me to share my content on their platform. So yeah, go and look up Strictly Muscle Car Talk and give them a follow. Ruben's Precision Automotive, shout out to him. I appreciate him and his team. Been great to work with. And of course, CSM Racing Engines, TOE Performance, and all the Falcon pages on Facebook. Falcon pages, you guys got a special place with me. I really hope that we have a international gathering sometime. I look forward to one day going to Australia and meeting Russell Eden and some of the XR tough guys out there, some of the XR Falcon guys, and some of the Cleveland aficionados out in Australia and around the world. There is a Sonoma County chapter Falcon Club meeting that I'm going to try and meet. So if any of you guys are going to that, please drop a comment in the video and let me know if that's something you guys plan on meeting. I want to go there and gain some, go there and provide content for you guys, and also meet some of the local Falcon guys in the area. Until next time, I appreciate you guys following the channel, and please like, share, subscribe, and we're making the channel grow. So we'll talk to you soon. Peace.